All right, we're live. Say hello.
Hey, Miami. How you doing? It's Mayor Francis Suarez.
Again?
Yes.
What's up, Mayor?
Only you can get me twice in a short period of time like this.
Off camera, we were talking, and we were saying, you know, one of the huge benefits of the show is I have an opportunity to sit with major players for 15 or 20 minutes, one-on-one, talking in a room. I mean, how many people get that opportunity to do that?
Not many. I mean, I'm sure many more would want it. But I think we were also talking about is sort of the magic of social media now, where you have a huge audience. The audience, it's sort of generic, and you know it's based on people's interest in your show, people's interest in our message and what we're doing, as opposed to what a third party is their perspective.
Sure.
And sometimes I often say that if you're not telling your own story, somebody else is, and you usually don't like their version of it.
That's right.
So I think it's really important. We had a great communications director, an amazing social media guy in Dave Zarko, who has really built my social media platform from what it was to almost 30,000 followers on Instagram.
What's your let's just take advantage. What's your Instagram handle?
So my Instagram handle is @FrancisXSuarez.
There you go. Follow him, please.
Please do. And it's we've got about 27,000. Would love to breach 30. My goal is 1 million. So I'm not a guy who has small goals, but so that's important. It's interesting. Different mediums, and I know we're kind of getting off topic.
Please, I love it.
Different mediums have different audiences.
Sure.
Twitter has a tendency to be a lot edgier, more critical. I think Instagram is more positive just generally. And for whatever reason, I built up a much more significant following on Instagram than I have on Twitter. Yeah. I guess maybe it's a personality thing. I'm not the type of person that likes to go and start bashing people, or I don't try to create controversy for the sake of controversy or be polarizing for the sake of being polarizing. It's just not who I am.
So negative energy. Who wants that in their life?
It's not me. It's not me. I definitely thrive on positive energy. I think we have a great story to tell in Miami. I love telling the story. Yeah. I try to tell it all over the world, and it's one that people are receiving and are excited about it.
Well, what I love most was off camera. He's a CrossFitter, which is awesome. Ran a killer 5K. We're going to talk about that in a second.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about Instagram, because you said on Instagram that in 2018 Miami grew by 10.5%.
Yep.
You didn't specify what we grew 10.5% in.
Sure.
Now that type of growth in anything is great, unless it's crime, which is not, obviously.
Of course not.
So what's the actually we have the lowest crime rate. We were talking off camera. The lowest crime rate since 1967 in the fiscal year.
Right.
Got to make sure I say fiscal year.
Yeah.
What did Miami grow 10.5% in?
So I'll break it down for you. We grew in tax base by 10.5%.
So what does that mean? Define tax base.
So that means that the taxable value of every property is put together, and that's your tax base. That is what we apply a tax rate, which is called the millage rate, to
save the millage rate, because we're going to talk about that next.
To determine what you pay in taxes on an annual basis in property taxes, right?
Got it.
A rough estimate is close to 2%, but there are a variety of different layers. Miami-Dade County, there's the school board, there's the city's portion, and of course whatever general obligation debt residents have voted on. Sure. So what grew from last year by 10.5% was our tax base. So the accumulation of all the properties in our city grew by 10.5% its value.
Wow.
And that's broken down in two components: $3 billion in new construction, and $2.6 billion in property value appreciation. And to put the $3 billion in context, the next biggest city, one of my dear friends, Carlos Hernandez, a mayor of Hialeah, did $800 million. So we are more than 3 times greater in growth of our property base in the next largest city in terms of our new construction. So the city did phenomenally well, as you mentioned. We had my first year, we had the lowest homicide rate in 51 years. So, and that number is not adjusted for population growth. So 51 years ago, we had a lot less people, but that's a gross number.
Sure.
So we were at 46 last year. I just came back from Brazil, and I met the governor of Rio, who's a great guy, by the way, Governor Whitzel.
Great city. Rio's an amazing city.
And it's a great city. But they have 300 homicides a month.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
And they're really working on it, and they're doing a great job. They're progressing, making strides in his very short tenure, 6 months as governor. But I mean, imagine 300 a month. We have 46 in 1 year. So that just gives you a little context of how well the city is doing in homicides. Significantly better than other major cities in the U.S.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I'm sure you're going to get to this, and I don't want to get ahead of it, but This is important in real estate. We have the second lowest tax rate.
All right, so let's go right now. Let's talk property taxes. So you just signed into order. Yes. It's funny. Everybody asks for the questions before, then they never read it, and then we just go and we wing it.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I love it. So you just signed into order the second lowest millage rate in the city of Miami in 30 years. So what does this mean for the homeowners, and what's happening in the city that you were able to pull this off?
So it's actually the second lowest rate in 55 years. Oh. And I'll tell you why we initially thought it was 30, because our budget book only goes back 30 years.
Okay.
So when we looked at it, it was the second lowest rate in 30 years. But then I realized that 30 years ago, it was a pretty high rate. So I figured, let's keep going back and seeing when. It's the second lowest rate since 1964.
That's crazy.
Incredible. And really the reason why is because we've invested in our growth, right? Instead of taxing people to death, which drives away investment, it drives away interest. We've done the opposite. As our city's grown, we've passed on the savings to our customers. We've been able to settle major lawsuits with our labor partners. We have contracts with all our labor partners, which pay them well, which is important because you want to have a motivated workforce. And we also have implemented a variety of processes to continue that growth expansion. Sure. One of my major initiatives on my first year was electronic plans. We want to make sure that from a process perspective and from a people perspective, that we're doing the very best that we can to basically give credibility to the argument that time is money. Government oftentimes does not act as if the private sector's money is important, and it is. It is to me. It is as a private sector lawyer for many, many, many years. So we're trying to get that culture to seep into our employees and understand that process and people will give you a great result.
Now, are the homeowners within the city of Miami going to see that on their tax bill for this year, like when they get their bill in November? So it'll be for this year or next year?
So it'll be for this November.
Okay. Oh, good.
Yeah, it'll be for this November. And so what's happening is, what we passed recently is the cap. So we can actually go further than the cap if possible. But we have just passed the cap, and the cap is a 55-year, second lowest in 55 years. The lowest is slightly lower than where we're at, so that's going to be my next goal. Yeah. We keep trying to create premium quality of life, a pathway to prosperity for all our citizens, and of course, we want Miami to be the most resilient city on the planet, both climatically and economically.
That's right, and Miami's one of the greatest cities out there.
There you go.
Now, one major draw to the city of Miami every March is Ultra.
Yep.
I know you were a big supporter of bringing Ultra back to the city of Miami. What are some of the benefits? Because obviously there's conversations on both sides of that, right? What are some of the benefits of having Ultra back within the city limits?
I mean, look, Ultra is a huge revenue generator for the city. Not only does it generate a lot of money for the city of Miami government, it's about $2 million for our government, but its economic impact is over $100 million. Its economic impact since it started 20 years ago is probably in the billions of dollars.
Got it.
So, as an economic engine, it's something that's really important. Secondly, our brand is young and fun and hip, sure. And that's something that as mayor, I always want to protect our brand. So that for me is also very important. Having said all that, we do have an amazing area, which is the Biscayne area, and I do want to protect our neighbors. So I work really, really hard with the neighbors and the neighbors groups to make sure that, to the extent possible, that this can be done in a way that doesn't affect their quality of life negatively. And I'll give you an example. At some point, we created an entertainment district in the city where we have 24-hour liquor licenses. We have places like Space and a variety of other places. And there was a time when our residents were complaining about the noise that was coming from that. And I remember meeting with the then owner, who was a friend, and saying, "Hey, man, you guys have this incredible thing, which is a 24-hour liquor. Nobody has this. You know what I mean? Be smart. Sure. Invest in your infrastructure and make sure that it doesn't negatively impact anybody." Sure. Our bosses are our residents. So as much as it's important for me to, for example, prioritize all our residents, because remember, our residents also work at Ultra, our residents also enjoy Ultra. Right. So it's just different kinds of residents, right? We have to make sure that we're protecting all our residents, and I have to weigh all the different priorities of our residents, which is probably one of the most difficult things that I have to do as mayor.
That's right. It is hard because it's hard to please everybody. You can't please everybody.
You can't please everybody.
Now, the last time we were on the show, the last time you were on the show, which I think it was like episode 30 something. I didn't do the. By the way, I'm Alex. I'm the president of Related ISG. You're watching episode 67 of the Closer Club. Awesome. We just continued our conversation right from behind the camera.
Good
but
stuff.
Last time you were on, we discussed MLS soccer coming to Miami. Yeah. Where are we today with that, and how soon do you think we're going to see Beckham's team playing here?
Well, today's an interesting day because yesterday we were giving some news about the environmental condition of the property, which shows some disturbing levels of contamination.
I read that on the way here, actually.
We knew the property was contaminated. We didn't know how severely. The team has always maintained that they're going to do the environmental remediation at their cost.
Sure.
So we're in the process of negotiating that deal and coming up with the agreements. We may have to temporarily shut down the golf course while we analyze the results that we've been given, which could potentially be dangerous. We're going to try to do that on an expedited basis so that if the toxicity levels are such that it's safe to use the asset, then we'll open it up right away. If it's not, we have a responsibility to make sure we protect our residents. So that's the process that we're going through right now. Okay. And but the good news is that there is a significant amount of remediation that's required on that land. There's been estimates of somewhere between $35 and $50 million. And the deal would allow for us to have that remediation and to have a 60-acre park at no cost to the taxpayers, that the taxpayers wouldn't be paying out of pocket for. So, you know, from my perspective, it's bittersweet. Obviously, we never want to have our properties in a condition of contamination, right. But there's a solution. And so, 60% of our residents approved us negotiating, going forward with the basics of the deal. And I found that to be a very, very resounding support in a difficult situation, because doing a stadium deal is always complicated. Yeah. I think,
especially in the middle of the city.
No politician wakes up wanting to do a stadium deal. I can tell you that right now. But I felt like I had a responsibility to look at this deal, to see, as a lifelong Miami and the first Miami-born mayor, this is a property that many people enjoy in its current condition, that play golf. Some of them are not City of Miami residents. And we had to look at, what could we create with this? We could create a 60-acre public park where everybody could enjoy it in the city. We could bring MLS soccer to Miami, which I think is a huge branding opportunity, a huge benefit, macroeconomic benefit for the city.
Puts us on the map.
23 additional acres of soccer fields and billions of dollars in revenue to the city that we're not otherwise realizing, because, again, we want to police our streets effectively. There's a variety of social issues, whether it's attacking poverty and creating a pathway to prosperity, whether it's building more parks, creating a better quality of life. There are things we want to invest in, resiliency, to make sure that Miami's around forever.
It's interesting about the importance of bringing soccer to my opinion. I was meeting with the vice president of a very large home builder in the country, not just Miami, but in the country. We met in Orlando. And he would do trips to Brazil. And when he would, I don't want to mention the builder because I don't want to get in any trouble, but
sure.
He'd go down to Brazil and say, hey, how many of you know X builder? And nobody would know the name.
Right.
And this is like one of the largest in the country.
Right.
Then all of a sudden this builder started sponsoring World Soccer,
right.
And it put them on the map.
Right.
And they're actually about 70% of the buyers in Orlando right now are international buyers as a result of them teaming up with soccer.
Let me tell you, I just came back from Brazil. I did a 5-day trip to Brazil where I met with the president, 4 governors, 3 mayors, 3 senators, and the president of the Supreme Court. It was a crazy, a very intense trip.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Miami and Orlando for Brazilians is hot, and Brazil has so much wealth, and it's such a, can be such a prosperous country if they can get their crime and their corruption under control. They have new leadership there, so I think there's the hope is that this new leadership will straighten things out, and really that's my hope, because the people in Brazil deserve it. They deserve to enjoy their marvelous country without fear, and really the world would benefit from having a prosperous Brazil.
Absolutely. My wife's Brazilian. She's from Rio, so we go there. We go there all the time.
I was just there with the mayor and the governor.
All right. So I know we're pressed for time because you have other meetings you got to go to. So let's see. So you recently ran a 21:45 5K. So you said at what pace? Average pace was
6.5 miles.
6 and change.
Yeah, Frankie was my pacer.
Frankie Ruiz, my good friend.
Yeah.
You should do the Escape to Miami Triathlon, man.
I would love to.
Well, let's talk. I'm going to do it. Let's do it. It's 5 weeks from this past Sunday, so you got 5 weeks to train. You can do a sprint or an Olympic.
Okay.
So
let's talk about it.
All right. Well, Frankie, we're coming for you, buddy.
Yeah.
But a lot of residents are spending time outdoors, right? I'm doing more triathlons now. You're running outside. What's the city doing to work on the park system? And this is specifically for Frankie. He wanted me to ask you this. So you can thank him.
I'm trying to recruit Frankie. I'm not sure if the deal is done, but I'm trying to recruit Frankie to be my liaison for public spaces in the city. I think we need somebody who has done the things that Frankie has accomplished in our city. He has become a great ambassador for public spaces. We have invested tens of millions of dollars in the underline, which is in construction. Thank you, Meg, for all your hard work on that, and so many others that have collaborated to make the underline a reality, and it's in construction. We have the Ludlum Trail. Thank you, Commissioner Rebecca Sosa, and so many others. Frankie as well was a part of that group to activate the Ludlum Trail, and that's something that the county has purchased now from FECI. They've zoned it. I mean, it's happening. These things are really, really happening. And there's a variety of other things. Plan Z for biking. We have to continue to invest in our public spaces. We have a potential great public space opportunity with the 395 rebuild, the Signature Bridge, which is going to create a 30-acre urban park. So I think there are things that we can do to continue to enrich the outdoor experience. Obviously, we have to protect our waterways. I'm big on water protection because it not just for our environment, but really economically. If you think about our drinking water, you think about what's at risk with septic tanks, and you think about our bay, which is a huge economic engine in our community. Those are all things that are extremely important to the viability of our city.
All right, there you go. Last question. I have one more, but I know you got to go.
I'm good.
So you're good? All right, so let's go for it. Infrastructure is something that everybody keeps talking about. We were getting rushed before. Congestion, public transportation, particularly. In my business in real estate, I love congestion because that just means more and more people are here. Density, right? More buyers, more renters, more sellers. So for me, it's a beautiful thing. What's the city working on right now to tackle the population growth in the infrastructure?
Well, without letting the cat too much out of the bag, we're focused on Miami being forever. We love this brand of Miami Forever. I got to give my predecessor credit. He's the one that came up with it, in conjunction with some other branders when they did the Miami Forever bond. But the idea is that Miami is a concept. It's a brand, and it should live forever. But for it to live forever, you have to plan for the future. You have to plan for more schools. You have to plan for better transportation. You have to plan for better resiliency. You have to plan for a variety of things. And so we are heading in that direction of putting together something that's really comprehensive, that's going to deal with all those issues, so that my legacy, hopefully, to the city will be making sure that Miami's around forever.
All right. When you're ready to make that announcement, let me know. We'll bring you back on.
We'll do.
Last question. We always end with a book, podcast, TED Talk recommendation. The last time you recommended Admiral McRaven's commencement speech at the University of Texas.
Yes,
starts off with making your bed.
I hope people saw it.
They did. A lot of people asked me about it, actually.
Really cool.
A lot of people. Have you come across anything new for the audience?
Yeah, so I'm reading a book called Love Your Enemies by Arthur Brooks. And Arthur Brooks he was a former director of the American Enterprise Institute. It's a policy think tank. And it's a really, really great book that really sort of flips on its head what we see happening in today modern day politics, which is we see contempt has seeped into our political drama. And you told me to turn it off, and somehow I clicked it on instead of off. But we've seen contempt, unfortunately, seep into our political discourse, and it's not productive. It doesn't create ideas. It doesn't solve problems. All it does is demonize people, and then it creates a scenario where you either fight or you ignore, because you either fight the people that are criticizing you, right, or you ignore them, and that's not healthy. It's not healthy to ignore people because it just creates contempt, and it's not healthy to fight with people in a non-productive way. Debates are fine. And policy differences are fine. We all have different, very unique experiences. And I think the bottom line is, and the basic should be, we should all be acting in good faith. If we believe in something, we believe in it firmly, we should defend it and we should advocate for it. But it should not be at the expense of insulting somebody else. Right. It's not, you have your beliefs and it's okay, and I have my beliefs and it's okay, and we can vigorously debate them. And then, by the way, there are forums to debate them, whether it's a policy debate on a law, right? And you might win on that argument, I might win on that argument. and then you move forward to the next argument, and that's okay. That's what our country was founded. That's what democracy is about. But when it gets to a level of contempt and that we see in today's day, it's counterproductive.
There you go. So love your enemies.
Love your enemies, Arthur Brooks.
There you go. We're done.
Download it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go turn off the camera.
No royalties.
Any parting words for the audience before I turn it off?
Miami has a great story. We're telling our story. We're going to continue to tell our story. Please keep telling all those New Yorkers and Californians and Brazilians to keep investing in our city.
There you go.